appetizing and yummy stuff takes a toll on our energy bills, right? So let me invite Murli Arikara, the Chief Technology Officer at Racanaa Energy, in terms of sharing his views on how would you future-proof your energy infrastructure for restaurants and kitchens. Looking forward to this.
Thank you. I hope you can all hear me. So when we talk about energy, coming from food, when we talk about energy, what we realize is there's a lot of changes happening when it comes to energy. Now, most of you have probably seen in the last 5 years electric mobility kicking in, and no one imagined that. I remember about 5 or 6 years back talking to people about electric mobility, and everyone said, look, it might happen, it could happen, but in 5 years, you see almost every brand, every major automotive brand talking about automotive moving towards electric mobility. Very similarly, what we are going to see is a significant change in how energy is delivered to you. And what I mean by that is environmental concerns. Environmental concerns are what are driving how you use energy and how energy is going to be delivered. So net zero is a concept that most of us are hearing on a continuous basis. And what that means to achieve net zero, energy is one of the key components or one of the key systems that actually creates emissions. So to get to net zero, they're talking about 85% of your energy coming from renewable sources. And what that means is the way energy is delivered is going to change, because so far what you had was electricity coming to you. Whenever you needed electricity, you turn it on, you get electricity because your power plants could generate that. But as you start moving towards renewables, you have both sides, even the input or the supply is going to be changing continuously, which means there are new methods in how energy is going to be built and how you're going to be charged for it. And as a result, energy efficiency and how you manage energy becomes very, very important. So what I'm going to talk about is that aspect from a kitchen's perspective and from a QSR perspective. So a restaurant typically consumes 5 to 7 times more energy per square foot than most commercial businesses. And in some restaurants, it could be as high as 10 times as much. So what that means really is that the energy portion for a restaurant is very important. About 10 to 15% of your operating costs are energy. Now, so everyone talks about energy efficiency and saying, I want to figure out how to reduce my energy consumption. So what happens is most of this energy, today if I go to any restaurant and ask them, do you know how much energy you're consuming? Almost everyone comes back to me with the numbers. They say, okay, this is how much energy we're consuming, and that's what you get from your energy bills. But if you ask them, do you know why you're consuming that energy? Very few people actually understand the detail behind it. So you only know why you're consuming your energy when you know when you're consuming your energy, where you're consuming your energy, and how you're consuming your energy. Only when you do that, and only when you understand that, can you actually take steps to manage your energy. And what I mean by that is, you have to look at how do I save energy. There are 3 different aspects that come to it. One, you talk about eliminating leakages. Leakages in terms of when are you turning things on, when are you turning things off. Do you need them on at that point of time? Eliminating leakages in the form of equipment that's not running at its optimum level. So asset health. Then you look at making changes in your process, because till now you did not understand why you are consuming this energy. Now you know why you're consuming the energy. Can you make changes in your process that you can get the same output but consume a lot lesser energy? And finally, you can look at equipment that's already existing in your facility. So you might have equipment that's 8 years old, 10 years old, that's running in your facility, continues to provide the output that you're looking at. However, there's newer equipment, or your equipment has degraded over time, and it's consuming a lot more energy, increasing your costs. So having the information and data to make that techno-commercial justification of when you need to change and bring in new equipment is just as important. Across these three measures, when they are fully implemented, it wouldn't be unusual to expect about 30 to 40% savings in your energy costs, fully implemented. So that's the benefit you get. But what you also get, which is just as important, is suddenly a lot of information on what's happening in your restaurant, because you're constantly monitoring every device or every equipment that's actually generating your revenue. So now you know how much energy is consumed, how they are being used, when they are being used. What you also understand from that, very simply, is information that tells you, okay, is this equipment going to fail? Usually most of us know an equipment has failed, and then we try to take action against it. What we can do is actually understand before the equipment fails that this is going to fail. So what I mean by that is, so when a person gets sick, what's the first thing you do? You measure your temperature and say, okay, my temperature has gone up, so I must have fever. You go to the doctor says, okay, great, I measure your temperature. Then I look at your blood pressure, and then I'll look at your pulse rate, and a few other things. So what we are talking about is equipment and systems that help you do that on a continuous basis. So people talked about Industry 4.0. So look at what a restaurant is. A restaurant is actually an assembly line that's continuously operating and moving up and down per the demand. The ability to monitor, look, and understand that your equipment is healthy is something that you can get from understanding how the voltage and current in the equipment flow and how it's consumed by the equipment. So that's something that we are able to do, and through that you get a lot of interesting information. It gives you information on saying, is my restaurant safe? So do you understand if your wires are okay? Do you understand if your equipment is not generating more heat and could result in a failure, and then in some rare cases could also lead to a restaurant fire? That's something that no one has an understanding of. So on an average in India, about 70% of the fires are caused because of electrical malfunction. So the ability to see and look and understand this upfront is something that we can provide. In addition to that, there are other aspects that you look at. One, I think someone was talking about standardization. So the ability to look at how equipment runs, at what time it comes on, what time it goes off, helps you understand that and helps you get to that standardization. So what we do is not just provide information, but take you through the entire cycle of providing you, getting the information by collecting data at each equipment level in terms of how it's operating, when it's coming on, what is the voltage current, the entire detail around it. And so think about us as like the Fitbit connected to each one of your equipment in your restaurant, and being able to give you that data on a continuous basis. Not only give you the data, but then we have our team that works on that data and comes up with the insights, and then talks about the interventions you need to take. And finally, from that, gives you the ability to take action to actually implement something, and then constantly monitor it and keep making improvements on a continuous basis. So if you look at a real case, so this is something that we implemented one of the QSRs. What we looked at for them was where they're consuming energy. So about 53% of the energy consumed in their kitchen equipment, and then about 22% for the refrigeration, and the rest of the equipment was formed the remaining 15%. But what we found interesting was where we could see equipment, specific equipment, where we were able to see loads where this particular equipment was actually consuming a lot higher than what its rated capacity was, which meant something was off with that equipment, which also meant that it was generating a lot more heat. And this is a place where you could lead to equipment failure, and in some rare cases, something like this could also lead to equipment fire. So this is something in terms of the automation that we put in place. So you could see how a particular equipment was running where it was not consistent in terms of its operation. And by doing what we did in terms of automation, we brought it back under control. So these are areas in which, one, it helps you standardize your operation, and two, it actually gets you to understand and know that everything is running where it needs to be. So you have large chains. From a central location, someone can look at our dashboards, and from that, information is available. through which they're able to detect and understand what is happening in each restaurant. So it's good to trust your managers, but always verify. And this gives you the ability to verify what's happening in the restaurant. So in terms of what it does in terms of value, I think the numbers are there. I'm not going to try to get into the detail there, but on all these respects, what you're able to see is there is a return on investment by implementing a solution like what we have. If you're interested in getting more information, we'd love to have you over at the booth. We have a booth here, and we'd love to hear from you and see if there's something we can do to help you out in your businesses. Thank you.